Welcome back, everyone, to another great session of the Visionary Speaker Series at One Earth Live. My name is Chris Decker from Uplift, and today it gives me great pleasure and great honor to introduce Gregg Braden, a scientist very well known across the world and a true visionary who brings science and spirit together. So welcome, Gregg. So great to have you here.
Chris, my brother, I'm so happy to be with you. I'm just going to take a moment and say hello to our global family. I don't know every single member of my global family, but I know every member is out there, and I love you all. Thank you for tuning in. Thanks for supporting this festival and this conference as well.
Oh, thank you, Gregg. Well, it's great to have you. It's just such an honor. And Gregg, you know, this is a pretty amazing time on the planet, as we all know. Like, we've had this incredible moment of pause, and it's so easy to focus on what's breaking down, but can you share a little bit from your feelings of what's actually breaking through now for humanity?
Well, you know, you use the term that very few people use and that I choose to use. It is a global pause. I don't think of this as a lockdown. I don't think of it as I mean, there are different ways that the pause is being expressed, for sure. We are all experiencing something, Chris, that we have never experienced in our lifetimes. And as a student of history, what I can say is, even in the pandemics of the past, we've never seen this on a global level, what we're seeing right now. I think the first thing for me, when this began, I could see the writing on the wall. I knew in January where this was going, and I was watching the WHO very, very closely as they were changing designations of what was happening. And a lot of people didn't get that just changing the designation from an epidemic to a pandemic set into motion the legal framework for all kinds of things that we'd never experienced before. I could see that coming. And one of the first things that I wanted to share with my community was that we are made for times just like this. The human body is made to adapt. We appeared on this earth, and scientists will agree with this. We appeared on this earth as what are called anatomically modern humans 200,000 years ago, Chris. So there's no argument about when we appeared. The question is how we got here. There's a lot of difference of opinion in how we got here. But what it tells me is we've got 200,000 years of experience for our bodies to know how to deal with contagions that we experience in our life, that the universe brings to our doorstep. This is a factor that is not even being considered in the mainstream media. In the mainstream, we're being told we've got two choices. We either have to have medicines to know what to do after we're infected, or we've got to have a vaccine to prevent us from being infected. Here's the irony. The vaccines that are typically developed mimic what we already do in our bodies anyway. And the fact that we are these powerful, masterful, resilient beings with 200,000 years of experience of mitigating and healing contagions in our own bodies, it's not even being expressed, not even being talked about. But this is what I now have found from the people that I'm working with our community. If we have a reasonably healthy immune system, then we have very little to be concerned about in this round of this pandemic. This is where it gets really interesting, because those people that are immune compromised do have something to be worried about. And a lot of people do not know that they are immune compromised through the lifestyle that we have been encouraged to live, the kinds of foods that we've been encouraged to eat in the Western lifestyle, the sedentary lifestyle, the packaged, the processed foods, the very unhealthy way the foods are produced. So what's really happening in this global pause, Chris, is it all boils down to love. And we're being asked if we love ourselves enough to give our bodies what our bodies need to be at their best, to do what they are designed to do. And I'm going to use that word intentionally. What our bodies are designed to do in times like this. When we appeared 200,000 years ago, what the best science of the modern world is telling us is we showed up just the way that we are today. If you take our DNA today and you compare it to the DNA extracted from the fossilized remains of our most ancient ancestors, this is the mystery This is the great mystery, Chris. What we find is that the DNA hasn't changed over time. When we appeared 200,000 years ago, we were not the process of a long, slow process over time where we developed these extraordinary capabilities that we have. We showed up with all of these capabilities intact to self-regulate our biology. We're the only form of life that we know today that can consciously self-regulate their biology. And what that means is we can choose to awaken a powerful immune response on demand. I mean, who doesn't want that right now? That's our survival depends upon it. We can choose to awaken the longevity enzymes in our bodies. You know, I was in school back in the 1950s and 60s. Anybody at my age, who doesn't want those longevity enzymes? Of course we do. We are the only form of life that can consciously awaken deep states of resilience, deep states of intuition, do all of these things on demand. And it's happening through an internal technology, a soft biological technology that's been with us from day one. And it suggests that we are made to deal with exactly what's happening in the world today. And that is not being acknowledged in the mainstream. We're being taught that we need something outside of us. And this external technology of chemicals in our bodies, of chips in our brain that are now being implemented and deployed, wires under our skin, all of these technologies, you know, as a scientist, I've been around technology all my life. The technology is not right, wrong, good, or bad. It's how it's applied. And that boils down to our thinking. So what I'm seeing happening, Chris, is as we emerge, we are now undergoing different phases of easing the restrictions. And we're moving into a world that cannot be the same as the world that we left in February and March of this year. And the beauty is that world doesn't exist yet because we're creating it as we emerge, and it's being created based upon the way we've been taught to think about ourselves. And if we think, one of two things is happening. Two schools of thought are emerging. There's a school of thought, and there are people that are emerging more powerful, more masterful, and more confident than ever that their bodies, the intelligence of their bodies, knows what to do if they simply honor and love themselves enough to live all of the spiritual principles, all of the biological principles, all the stuff we know. Good diet, movement, exercise, breath, lowering stress, all of these things. But these are the core of our most ancient and cherished spiritual traditions. So some people are emerging that way, and others are emerging as fearful victims. It's like they're peeking out from under the blanket, and they're almost afraid. They've been conditioned to be afraid in the world because they've been conditioned, and this is important, they've been conditioned that they cannot trust their own bodies to do what their bodies are designed to do. And what's going to happen is we're going to have both of these groups of people in the world at the same time, and the masters and the victims. And the victims are going to look around, and they're going to see the joy that is in the lives of the people that have learned to trust their bodies and become even healthier. And they're going to see the kind of life that's possible. And they're going to say, I want what they have. And in this way, by example, I think we're all probably going to arrive at this point where we understand that the way that we live and the way that we think, it's more than a philosophical concept. Our lives depend upon it. Our survival depends upon it. And regardless of what the mainstream media is telling us right now, there's another narrative, a new human story that is emerging. And it's a story, my dear friend, my brother, Dr. Bruce Lipton, and we have worked together almost 30 years. We have shared the stage together in different ways. We're sharing this new human story. And this is the story that is rewriting the history of our species. I've never been more optimistic. I'm also a realist, Chris. And what I realize is it takes a lot of work to change the way we think and to change our programming and to change the way that we've been taught to live. I'll just share with our audience, I come from a very dysfunctional, abusive alcoholic family back in the 1950s and 60s. My father was the abuser. My mom and my younger brother and I got the bad end of that. And when my father finally left, he left the family. It was a hard day for my mom. It was a good day for me, because I knew that the time of the abuse was over. My mom gave me a book on that day, and it was a very popular book in the mid-20th century by a man named Khalil Gibran. The title of the book was called The Prophet. And I'm going to invite our viewers, if you've not explored this book, check it out. But each chapter is just a couple of pages of a revelation on some aspect of living. And I was 10 years old when my father left, and my mom gave me this book, and there was a chapter on work. And what Khalil Gibran told us, he said, work is love made visible. Work is love made visible. No one had ever taught me or invited me or even led me to believe that anything like that could be possible. I was taught in the very conservative community in the Midwest, we hated work. Everybody was taught to hate your work. You do it to make the money for the things that you love. Work is love made visible. And that was a principle that became a cornerstone of my life to this very moment. It's on every email that I send out. It's a mantra. It's on my wall right now in the studio here. Because everything I do, the energy I put into it, is my love for myself and for my world and the people of this world made visible. So I'm saying that because it will take work for all of us to change the way we think and live. It's our love made visible. And the question is, do we love ourselves enough to put the energy into those kinds of changes so that we can be the best people that we can possibly be and build the best possible world? And we're seeing the answer to that right now in festivals like the ones that you're putting together and the gatherings all over the world as we emerge in these, what Bruce loves to call the imaginal cells, in the chrysalis, in the cocoon of our global pause. As the imaginal cells see a new possibility in nature, they inform the other cells that become the butterfly. As we as imaginal cells allow ourselves to embrace the deepest truths of our existence, Chris, what we know is there's something much, much more than what we've been led to believe. And I want to be really clear. A lot of the people in the mainstream media, they're good people. They need to make a living. They need to feed their families. They simply do not know what we're talking about. They do not know the science that's on our side. They don't know the new discoveries because those discoveries are not being shared in the classrooms and the textbooks. So I'm not saying that they're bad people at all. What I'm saying is there's another way to think and to live. And as we embrace that in our lives, other people are going to want to do the same thing. And in that way, we are the imaginal selves. We create the beautiful new world. So this is unrehearsed. I just shared a long answer to a very brief question because I wanted to lay that foundation. And I'm happy to go wherever you want to go from there.
Well, thank you so much, Greg. That's just beautifully put. Thank you. I mean, definitely, it was profound. Thank you. So, it's yes, these imaginal cells, and I can definitely feel it's happening. And I mean, do you think it's easy to see that the physical, that there's a physical pause, but what's happening on the spiritual level? Do you think there's like a spiritual uprising happening or upliftment?
I do, Chris. And, from my perspective, where do you draw the line between spirituality and everyday life? And the moment you believe that you have drawn that line, you've just fallen into the ancient trap that has kept humankind stuck in the suffering for longer than we can even remember. So for me, life is the prayer, life is the meditation, and spirituality on its deepest level. If you look up the definitions of spirituality, it's really interesting because it's about relationships. Our relationship to ourselves, our relationship to one another, our relationship to God and a higher power, our relationship to the earth that we live on, our relationship to the past, our relationship to the future, our relationship to the cosmos. Isn't that interesting? So when you think about spirituality from the perspective of its definition, life is the spiritual experience. And I am seeing an awakening. And what comes down for me, if I had to encapsulate it into a single sentence, I think what we're discovering is the better we know ourselves, Chris, the better we know ourselves, the better equipped we are to deal with whatever life, whatever the universe brings to our doorstep. And even though we may not know what will happen in the future, we cannot know. I think this is one of the things, the spiritual experiences that we are all undergoing now, is we've been conditioned to live in this world of structure and control, and everything is mapped out, and you know on your day timer where you're going to be and what's going to be happening. How can you plan in a world of so much uncertainty when we don't know if conferences are going to be allowed, if concerts are going to be allowed, if jobs are going to exist, if the companies we used to work for are going to exist, if the economic system is going to be where it is, or if it's going to tank like so many people are suspecting? How do you live in that world? That's a world of uncertainty. So we are all discovering now that there are things in this moment that cannot be known down the road. And we're learning we have to be okay with that. And we're learning that if we can trust ourselves, we are okay with that. We're conditioned to hinge our sense of well-being upon the world around us, upon our external world. And we all know this, if you come home from work and you turn on the news and terrorist attacks and the stock market tanks and, murders in your city and a pandemic in the world, that can be stressful for some people. And what we're learning in our global pause is we're almost overwhelmed. There's so many things happening that we have no control over, that I know people that are doing this. They are wearing themselves out. They are emotionally exhausted. They are psychologically exhausted, and they are physically exhausted, and their health has taken a hit from the exhaustion and of attempting to control the uncontrollable. And I think what we're finding is, rather than trying to control that world of uncertainty and volatility, as we learn the deepest truths of our existence, as we learn that we are designed, we're wired to self-regulate, and that when we embrace the mastery, the depth of that power, that we're okay no matter what's happening out there, and we begin to decouple our sense of well-being from that external world. And I think that perhaps is one of the most powerful spiritual lessons, to answer your question, that we are learning on different levels. The beauty is not everyone learns the same way at the same time, and not everyone thinks the same. And that's our diversity. That's where our strength comes from. I just had this conversation yesterday. Somebody said, why can't we all get together, on this? And I said, you wouldn't want to, because if the whole world was wired to think like the Borg, on Star Trek, if we all thought exactly the same way, exactly the same time, we made exactly the same choices and decisions, what happens if one of those decisions is wrong? And we've all made that together, it's all over. So for me, what I see happening, I'm working with a lot of adjunct groups. We're working with the United Nations group. I just spent the weekend working with an adjunct group who is working with what are called the Sustainable Development Goals 2030, SDG 2030s. Yeah. 2030. 17 beautifully crafted goals that look awesome at first blush. They look awesome. Who wouldn't want to eradicate poverty? Who wouldn't want to eradicate disease? But then you look at the fine print of how those goals are being achieved, and there are some real concerns there. So I'm using this as an example. We're emerging into this new world, and we're making choices just like they're making in the UN. How do you make those choices in the unknown, in the destructured unknown? And my offering to that is that we don't know what's going to happen in the world. And what I've said to the UN, and what I'm saying to my brothers and sisters right now, is there are fundamental pillars of human values that we must bring from the back burner to the front burner. And we must make these fundamental values the principles upon which we base all of our choices, all of our decisions, all of our laws, all of our policies, whether it's the UN or whether it's your local government or whether it's your family, choosing what you're about to do next. Those fundamental principles have to be life, the value of life, the value of freedom, the value of imagination, and the value of community. And if we can honor those fundamental principles and allow them the priority, not a casual consideration, but to become the foundation upon which we base and build whatever it is that's going to come down the road. If we can do that, we can't go wrong, Chris. What we've been conditioned to do is to put those to the side, and we put economic interests first. We have put national interests first. We have all these competing interests, but we forgot about these fundamental human values. Human life is so precious, and it has been sidetracked, and it's been made into a commodity. We've been taught to devalue the principle of all life, including human life. Our imagination, the ability to think freely and come up with new out of the ideas boxes. And this is why our freedom of expression and the way it is now being threatened in even digital media. Ideas that don't conform are not being allowed. And that's a dangerous precedent, Community, we're being asked to socially distance. That is a direct violation to our most fundamental instincts. Now, temporarily, maybe it's good for some instances, but social distancing doesn't mean social isolation. And it's more important now than ever to have community like you're creating right now. I got to tell you, brother, if you're going to have a global pandemic, let's have it in the technological age, so we can stay in touch. So community and freedom, the freedoms that we take for granted are actually rare in the history of society on this planet. Our young people are not being taught that. And as we now sense some of those freedoms are being threatened, it's up for discussion. It's in the conversation again. So again, I'm going to summarize. I'm going to say, if we can hold these fundamental values as the foundation, the cornerstone that guides all of our choices and all of our decisions, I really believe, even though we don't know what's going to happen, if those are the guiding principles as we move forward, I don't think we can go wrong. Life, freedom, imagination, and community.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Gregg. We've come to the end of this session, and would you like to share one more closing thoughts or closing?
I think I just shared it, Chris. To me, this went by very, very quickly. My closing thought is I want to share how much I appreciate you, your vision, your dedication. It'd be a lot easier not to do what you're doing. I'm sure there are a lot of things you would love to do in your life. The energy, the focus, and the vision, and the dedication, the perseverance to move forward all the years that you have, and you change with the times. You're changing with the technology, and you are what we need. So thank you for making this possible,
thank you
brother.
So much. Well, you put it so beautifully before. It's like when your work is your love, and I'm in love with this journey, and it's a beautiful journey. It doesn't feel like work. There's no heavy lifting. I mean, there's definitely, like you said, it definitely takes work, and work sometimes takes a little bit more effort. But when you're totally in love with that pathway that you've dedicated yourself to, it's a joy. And it's been a great joy to be with you today, Gregg. Thank you so much.
My joy, my love to our global family, my global brothers and sisters, my global community.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. That was Gregg Braden. We're signing off, and then from another great session with One Earth Live. We'll see you again. Bye-bye.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Welcome. Welcome.
Namaste.
Welcome
to the Global Days of Unity.
From the minute that I heard about Global Days of Unity, I understood that it was the thing for this time. The incredible coming together of people, music, song, prayer, that it's like a massive infusion of energy into consciousness, into the world. And what I love about it is it's completely accessible by anyone, anywhere. And let's create that togetherness and that cohesion third weekend of every month.
deep inhale to the center.
Today at this session, we have a wonderful panel, wonderful presenters.
It brings together a unity that I don't think has ever really truly been done correctly. And just learning about the initiative makes my heart warm.
Put our thought into it, we put intention into it, it can just be so powerful and can become so huge and have such a big impact.
I think what inspires me the most about the Global Days of Unity initiative is the experimental aspect of it, right? Like, this thing has never been done before. We've tried so many different things. We haven't tried people coming together with a sense of intention and joy. Let's try something new. Let's see what humanity can be. And I'm excited about that possibility.
If we send out love, then the world responds with love. So in Global Days of Unity, just imagine the consequence of a large number of people sending out wonderful thoughts of love, peace, and harmony, because we can change this planet just by the thinking of those wonderful thoughts. And in community, we re-empower each other, but we can also empower the world.
I want to invite you
The third weekend of every month.
Let us be together
To the Global Days of Unity.
Welcome home.